Naomi Wells?
Naomi Wells stood in front of a black SUV somewhere deep in the Kentucky mountains, watching a tall, broad-shouldered man walk toward her through the morning mist. Her father's last words still echoed in her head. "You're gonna save this family, baby girl. You're gonna make everything right." She touched the small, battered suitcase at her feet. Everything she owned in the world fit inside it. 2 pairs of jeans, some t-shirts, her mama's Bible, and a photograph of better days. The man stopped about 3 feet in front of her. He was tall, had to be at least 6'3", with dark brown skin, a neatly trimmed beard, and eyes so intense they seemed to look straight through her. He wore work boots, dark jeans, and a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up to his elbows. There was a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. Naomi Wells. His voice was deep, rough like gravel on a dirt road. She nodded because her voice had disappeared somewhere between the trailer park in Hazard and this isolated mountain estate. "Tobias Blackwood," the man said, his expression unreadable. "As of today, you belong to me." Words hit Naomi like a punch to the stomach. Belong to him, like she was a car, a piece of furniture, property. But how did a 24-year-old woman from eastern Kentucky end up standing in front of a stranger who just told her she belonged to him? Let me take you back 1 week, and I promise you, this story will show you that sometimes the worst betrayal can lead you exactly where you need to be. But first, you gotta walk through hell. Make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because this story is going to take you on an emotional journey you won't forget. 1 week earlier, Naomi pushed through the door of Rosie's Diner in downtown Hazard, Kentucky, her feet aching from a double shift. The smell of grease and coffee clung to her uniform, a faded pink dress that had seen better days about 5 years ago. "Night, Naomi," Rosie called from behind the counter, wiping down the same spot she'd been cleaning for the last 10 minutes. "Night, Miss Rosie," Naomi said, forcing a smile even though exhaustion pulled at every muscle in her body. Outside, the October air bit at her skin. Naomi pulled her thin jacket tighter and started the 15-minute walk to the trailer park on the edge of town. She'd worked the breakfast and lunch shift at the diner, then her evening shift at the Hazard Public Library. 16 hours on her feet, and she'd made maybe $80 in tips. It still wouldn't be enough. It was never enough. The Happy Hollow trailer park wasn't happy, and the hollow was more like a muddy depression in the earth where hope went to die. Naomi walked past rusted-out cars and sagging mobile homes until she reached number 42, a faded blue single-wide that leaked when it rained and froze when it snowed. Home sweet home. She climbed the cinder block steps and pushed open the door that never locked right anymore. "Daddy?" Naomi called into the darkness. "You here?" No answer. She flipped the light switch. The bulb flickered twice before staying on, illuminating the disaster that was their living room. Empty beer cans covered the coffee table. The TV played some late-night infomercial to an empty couch. Naomi's stomach tightened. This was bad. When her daddy wasn't home by 11 o'clock, it meant he was at Eddie's pool hall. And when Luther Wells was at Eddie's pool hall, he was gambling away money they didn't have. Again. She thought about her mama gone 12 years now from cancer they couldn't afford to treat properly because Daddy had gambled away the insurance money. Naomi had been 12 years old, watching her mama waste away while her daddy made promises he never kept. "I'll stop, baby," he'd say. "I swear on your mama's grave, I'll stop." He never stopped. Naomi kicked off her shoes and collapsed on the couch, too tired to even make it to her bedroom. She'd rest her eyes for just a minute, then take a shower then. The door banged open so hard it hit the wall. Naomi jerked upright, her heart hammering. Her daddy stumbled inside, and Naomi's breath caught in her throat. Luther Wells's face was a mess. His left eye swollen shut, blood dried under his nose, his lip split open and still bleeding fresh. "Daddy?" Naomi jumped up and rushed to him. "What happened? Who did this to you?" Luther collapsed into the recliner, breathing hard. His hands were shaking. "Baby girl," he said, his voice thick and strange. "Baby girl, I messed up. I messed up real bad this time." Fear crawled up Naomi's spine like a spider. She'd heard her daddy say he messed up 1,000 times before, but she'd never heard this tone in his voice. This wasn't regular shame. This was terror. "Much do you owe?" Naomi asked quietly. Luther looked up at her with his one good eye, and Naomi saw something she'd never seen before in her daddy's face, complete and total despair. $75,000, Luther whispered. The world tilted sideways. Naomi's voice came out as a squeak. Daddy, that's not possible. How could you? Blackwoods run a poker game, Luther said, talking fast now like if he got the words out quick enough they wouldn't be real. Up in the mountains, high stakes. I thought I had a good hand, baby girl. I had a full house, kings over tens. I went all in. I was so sure. $75,000, Naomi repeated, her mind unable to process a number that large. They didn't have $75, let alone $75,000. They gave me 2 weeks to pay, Luther continued, and now tears were running down his battered face. But I can't, Naomi. I can't get that kind of money. And these ain't the kind of people you don't pay. The Blackwoods, they own these mountains. They own the timber, the land, the people. You don't cross them. You don't owe them and not pay. Naomi's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the couch. What are we gonna do? Luther was quiet for a long moment. Too quiet. When Naomi looked up, her daddy wasn't meeting her eyes. Daddy. Her voice came out small like she was a little girl again. What did you do? I made a deal, Luther said to the floor. What kind of deal? The kind that saves my life, Luther said, and finally he looked at her. The kind where you marry Tobias Blackwood and the debt gets cleared. For a second, Naomi thought she'd misheard him, that the exhaustion was making her hallucinate. But the look on her daddy's face told her she'd heard exactly right. You sold me, Naomi said, her voice flat and emotionless because if she let any feeling in, she'd shatter into a million pieces. You sold your daughter to pay a gambling debt. Ain't like that. Then what is it like? Naomi stood up, anger flooding through her like hot water. Tell me, Daddy, what is it like when a father trades his child for his own life? You don't understand, Luther said, standing too, reaching for her. These people, Naomi, they would have killed me. They still might kill me if you don't. Get out, Naomi said. Luther blinked. What? Get out of my sight before I do something I regret. Baby girl, please, don't call me that, Naomi screamed, and it felt like something broke open inside her chest. Don't you ever call me that again. Mama called me that. Mama loved me. You don't love me. You love cards and dice and whatever the hell gives you a rush. But you don't love me. Luther's face crumpled. That ain't true. I love you more than. If you loved me, you wouldn't sell me like a used car, Naomi's voice cracked. If you loved me, you would have stopped gambling when Mama died. If you loved me, you would have been a father instead of a A she couldn't finish. The words dissolved into sobs that tore out of her throat like they were ripping her apart from the inside. Luther moved toward her, but Naomi held up her hand. Touch me, she said through her tears. Don't you dare touch me. They stood there in that terrible trailer, surrounded by years of bad decisions and broken promises. And Naomi realized something that made her feel like she was drowning. She had no choice. If she didn't do this, they'd kill her father. And despite everything, despite the gambling, despite the neglect, despite him choosing his addiction over her again and again and again, he was still her daddy. He was all she had left. When? Naomi asked, her voice hollow. Luther's shoulders sagged with relief. 1 week. They're giving us 1 week to get out, Naomi said again, quieter this time. I need you to leave right now. Naomi, please, Daddy, she whispered, and she hated how broken she sounded. Please just go. Luther hesitated, then grabbed his jacket and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the handle. Your mama would be proud of you, he said softly. You're saving this family, baby girl. Then he was gone, and Naomi was alone. She stood in the middle of the trailer for a long time, not crying anymore, not feeling anything at all. Then slowly, mechanically, she walked to her bedroom, barely bigger than a closet, and pulled out the small suitcase from under her bed. She packed like she was watching herself from far away. Jeans, t-shirts, her mama's Bible. The only photo she had of her parents together, back when her daddy still smiled and her mama's eyes still had light in them. When she was done, Naomi sat on her bed and stared at the wall. She'd spent her whole life in this town, born in the Hazard Hospital, went to Hazard High School, worked at Rosie's Diner and the public library. Her whole world fit inside a 15-mile radius, and now she was going to marry a man she'd never met to save a father who'd never saved her. The next morning, Naomi went to the library even though she was scheduled for her day off. She needed information. Mrs. Patterson, the head librarian, looked surprised to see her. Naomi, honey, what are you doing here? You worked yesterday. I need to use the computer, Naomi said. Mrs. Patterson's eyebrows went up, but she nodded toward the ancient desktop in the corner. Help yourself. Naomi sat down and typed Tobias Blackwood, Kentucky into the search bar, Nothing. She tried Blackwood Family, Eastern Kentucky. A few results popped up, mostly about Blackwood Timber Company, a legitimate business operating in the Daniel Boone National Forest area. The company website showed a professional operation, sustainable logging, local employment, community investment, but there was no mention of anyone named Tobias. No photos, no profiles. Naomi tried Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Nothing. It was like the man didn't exist. She sat back in the chair, frustrated and more scared than before. Who was this person she was supposed to marry? What kind of man had so much power that her daddy was terrified of him but so little presence that he didn't exist online? Naomi, Mrs. Patterson's voice made her jump. You okay, honey? You look pale. Patterson, Naomi said slowly. Have you ever heard of the Blackwood family? Up in the mountains near Red River Gorge, Mrs. Patterson's friendly expression shut down like someone had flipped a switch. Why are you asking about them? The tone of her voice sent ice through Naomi's veins. I heard the name somewhere and stay away from those people, Mrs. Patterson said firmly. Nothing good comes from getting involved with the Blackwoods. They might run legitimate business on the surface, but everyone around here knows there's more going on up in those mountains. Gambling, moonshine, who knows what else. They've owned that territory for generations, and they don't take kindly to outsiders asking questions. Have you ever met any of them? Naomi pressed. Like Tobias Blackwood, Mrs. Patterson's face went even more serious. I've never met him personally, but I've heard things. They say he used to be different, friendly, even. Went to UK, got a business degree, was gonna take the family business completely legitimate. But then something happened about 5 years back, some kind of tragedy. After that, he shut himself up in that mountain estate and barely comes to town. The few people who have dealt with him say he's cold as ice. Won't look you in the eye, barely talks. She leaned closer to Naomi. Why are you asking about this? Naomi couldn't tell her, couldn't tell anyone. Just curious, she lied. Mrs. Patterson didn't look convinced, but she let it go. That night, Naomi tried to eat dinner, but everything tasted like cardboard. Her daddy hadn't come home, probably staying with one of his gambling buddies, avoiding her. She pulled out her mama's Bible and opened it to a random page. The book fell open to Psalm 23, and Naomi's eyes caught on one line. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. She closed the Bible and pressed it to her chest. Mama, she whispered to the empty trailer, I don't know what to do. I'm so scared. If you can hear me, if you're up there somewhere, please, please help me be strong enough for what's coming. Trailer didn't answer. The universe didn't answer. Naomi was alone. The week passed in a blur of numb routine. Work at the diner, work at the library, pack her few belongings, try not to think about what was coming. Luther came back on the third day with a shopping bag. They sent this for you, he said, not meeting her eyes. For the ceremony. Naomi opened the bag and pulled out a dress. It was simple, cream-colored, knee-length, nothing fancy. But it was new. Probably cost more than everything in Naomi's closet combined. There's shoes too, Luther added. And they said to be ready Sunday morning at 9. Someone's coming to pick you up. You coming? Naomi asked, hatting herself for even caring. Luther shook his head. They said just you. I ain't invited. Of course not. Why would they want the man who'd gambled away his daughter at his daughter's forced wedding? Sunday morning came too fast and not fast enough. Naomi put on the cream dress and the shoes that actually fit perfectly. Someone had done their research. She looked at herself in the cracked bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked like a bride. She felt like a prisoner. At exactly 9 o'clock, she heard a vehicle pull up outside. Naomi picked up her suitcase and walked to the door. Luther was sitting on the couch, staring at nothing. Daddy, Naomi said. He looked up, and for just a second, she saw genuine pain in his eyes. I'm sorry, baby girl, I'm so sorry. Naomi wanted to scream at him, wanted to tell him sorry didn't fix anything. Sorry didn't erase the betrayal. But instead, she just said, goodbye, Daddy. Then she walked out of the trailer and didn't look back. A black SUV sat in the muddy driveway. The driver's door opened and a man stepped out, Asian, maybe late 20s, wearing business casual clothes that looked out of place in the trailer park. Naomi Wells, he asked with a friendly smile that seemed genuine. She nodded. I'm Marcus Chen, the man said, taking her suitcase before she could protest. I work for Tobias. I'm here to drive you to the estate. He opened the back door for her and Naomi climbed in, her heart pounding so hard she thought she might be sick. Marcus got in the driver's seat and pulled out of the trailer park. It's about an hour-and-a-half drive, he said, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. You doing okay? No, Naomi said honestly, because what was the point of lying? Marcus's expression softened. I know this situation is complicated, but for what it's worth, Tobias isn't a bad person. He paused, choosing his words carefully. He's been through a lot, lost people he loved. It changed him. Patterson said something happened 5 years ago, Naomi said quietly. Marcus's hands tightened on the steering wheel. That's not my story to tell, but yeah, 5 years ago everything changed. They drove in silence for a while, leaving Hazard behind, climbing into the mountains. The roads got narrower, more winding. Trees closed in on both sides, oak, maple, pine, so thick you couldn't see more than a few feet into the forest. Have you worked for him long? Naomi asked, just to break the silence. Known Tobias since college, Marcus said. We were roommates at UK. He was different back then, laughed all the time, had big plans for taking the family business completely legitimate, expanding it. Then he stopped. Well, things changed. You stayed. He's my best friend, Marcus said simply. You don't abandon your friends when they're drowning. You throw them a lifeline and hope they grab it. Something about the way Marcus said it made Naomi think he'd been throwing lifelines for 5 years, and Tobias hadn't grabbed a single one. After about an hour, Marcus turned off the main road onto a gravel driveway that wound up the mountain. Trees gave way to stunning views, cliffs and valleys, the kind of beauty that would take your breath away if you weren't terrified. Finally, they rounded a curve and Naomi saw it. The Blackwood estate, it was massive, a dark wood structure that looked like a cabin in a mansion had a baby. 3 stories, huge windows, wraparound porch surrounded by forest. Beautiful and isolated, a prison made of timber. Marcus parked in front of the house and Naomi's hands started shaking. Hey, Marcus said gently, turning to look at her. You don't have to do this. I could turn this car around right now. Drive you anywhere you want to go. Tobias would be angry, but he'd get over it. One wild second, Naomi considered it, just running, disappearing, starting over somewhere her daddy's mistakes couldn't touch her. But then she thought about Luther's beaten face, the terror in his eyes. They would have killed me. No, Naomi said, her voice stronger than she felt. I have to do this. Marcus looked like he wanted to argue, but he just nodded and got out to open her door. Naomi stepped out of the SUV onto gravel, her new shoes crunching softly. The mountain air was crisp, clean, nothing like the industrial smell of Hazard. Birds sang in the trees. It would have been peaceful if her heart wasn't trying to break out of her ribcage. The front door of the estate opened. A woman stepped out, older, maybe early 60s, with dark brown skin, gray hair pulled back in a tight bun, wearing a black dress that probably cost more than Naomi made in a year. Her face was sharp, angular, beautiful in a cold way. Miss Wells, the woman said, her voice crisp and businesslike. I'm Ruby Blackwood, Tobias's mother. Welcome to the family. The way she said welcome didn't sound welcoming at all. Ruby walked down the steps toward Naomi, her eyes scanning her up and down like she was inspecting livestock. Ruby said. You're prettier than I expected, that's good. Tobias needs something pleasant to look at. Naomi's face burned with humiliation, but she kept her mouth shut. Come inside, Ruby ordered. We have a lot to do today. The ceremony is in 2 hours. 2 hours. Naomi's voice came out higher than she intended. But I thought I didn't even meet him yet. You'll meet him at the ceremony, Ruby said dismissively, already walking back toward the house. No point in drawing this out. You're here to fulfill a contract, not to court. Marcus gave Naomi an apologetic look and grabbed her suitcase. Naomi followed Ruby into the house, her legs feeling like they might give out at any moment. The inside of the estate was stunning. Hardwood floors, high ceilings with exposed beams, huge windows that let in natural light. Artwork covered the walls, all by black artists. Furniture in rich jewel tones, emerald, sapphire, deep purple. It looked like something from a magazine. It looked nothing like a home. Your room, Ruby said, opening a door on the 2nd floor. Naomi stepped inside and her breath caught. The room was beautiful, a large bed with a cream and gold comforter, a sitting area with a velvet couch, a private bathroom she could see through an open door. Windows overlooked the forest and mountains. It was the nicest room Naomi had ever seen. It was also a cage. The ceremony will be in the backyard, Ruby said. Someone will come get you at 11, don't be late. Then she left, closing the door behind her with a soft click that sounded very much like a lock even though it wasn't. Naomi stood in the middle of the beautiful room and felt tears sliding down her face. "Mama," she whispered, "I'm so scared." A knock on the door made her jump. "Naomi." A woman's voice, younger than Ruby's, warmer. "Can I come in?" "Yes," Naomi said, quickly wiping her eyes. The door opened, and a woman stepped in, mid-30s, dark brown skin, natural hair and a twist-out, wearing jeans and a sweater. She had kind eyes and a gentle smile. "I'm June," the woman said, "Tobias's sister, and I'm so sorry for what my family is doing to you." Kindness in June's voice made Naomi's tears start again. June crossed the room and pulled Naomi into a hug. A real hug, warm and tight, and the first human comfort Naomi had felt in a week. "This isn't right," June said softly. "What my mother is doing, what your father agreed to, none of this is right." "Then why is it happening?" Naomi asked against June's shoulder. June pulled back, her eyes sad. "Because Ruby Blackwood gets what Ruby Blackwood wants. And she wants Tobias to move on from what happened 5 years ago. She thinks giving him a wife will fix him." "What happened 5 years ago?" Naomi asked. June hesitated. "That's Tobias's story to tell, but I'll say this: my brother used to be one of the kindest, most loving men I've ever known. Then he lost everything that mattered to him in one night. He's been barely living ever since, just going through the motions." "Your mother thinks marrying a stranger will help him?" Naomi asked. "My mother thinks controlling every situation will help," June said. "She's wrong, but she'll never admit it." She squeezed Naomi's hands. "Listen to me. If you want to leave, if you want me to help you run, I will right now. I'll put you in my car, give you money, drive you wherever you want to go." It was the second escape offer in an hour, and Naomi wanted to take it so badly her teeth hurt. "But they'll kill my father if I don't do this," Naomi said quietly. June's face fell. "Oh, honey, is your father worth this sacrifice?" Naomi thought about Luther. About all the broken promises, about her mama's medical bills gambled away, about 12 years of choosing cards over his daughter. "No," Naomi admitted, "but he's all I have." June pulled her into another hug. "Then I'll be here for you, okay? Whatever you need, you're not alone in this." A sharp knock on the door made them both jump. "It's time," Ruby's voice called through the door. "Come downstairs." June gave Naomi's hand one more squeeze. "You're stronger than you know," she whispered. "Remember that." June left and Naomi was alone again. She looked at herself in the mirror one more time. The cream dress, the nice shoes, her natural curls pulled back in a simple bun. She looked like a bride. She felt like she was walking to her own funeral. But Naomi Wells had been raised by hard times and harder choices. She'd survived her mama's death. She'd survived her daddy's addiction. She'd survived poverty and loneliness and the kind of crushing hopelessness that made other people give up. She would survive this too. Naomi opened the door and walked downstairs. Ruby was waiting in the foyer with Marcus and a man Naomi didn't recognize, older, white, wearing a suit. "This is Pastor Williams," Ruby said. "He'll perform the ceremony." Pastor gave Naomi a sympathetic look that told her he knew exactly what kind of ceremony this was. "This way," Ruby said, leading them through the house to a back door. They stepped outside onto a large deck that overlooked the mountains. The view was breathtaking. Fall colors painting the forest in reds and golds, cliffs rising in the distance, a valley spreading out below like something from a painting. And standing at the edge of the deck with his back to them was a tall, broad-shouldered man in dark jeans, work boots, and a flannel shirt. Tobias Blackwood, Naomi's future husband. He didn't turn around as they approached. "Tobias," Ruby said sharply. "She's here." Slowly, so slowly it felt like time was moving through honey, Tobias turned around. Naomi's breath caught. He was younger than she expected, late 30s, not old at all. Dark brown skin, a short beard, intense eyes that looked black in the morning light. Handsome in a severe way, like a thunderstorm or a cliff face. There was a scar cutting through his left eyebrow, but it was his expression that made Naomi's stomach drop. He looked at her with absolutely nothing in his eyes. No anger, no interest, no emotion at all. He looked dead inside. "Let's get this over with," Tobias said, his voice flat and emotionless. "Drop a comment right now and tell me. Would you forgive a parent who did this to you? Let me know what you're thinking." The ceremony was nothing like a real wedding. There was no music, no flowers, no guests besides Ruby, Marcus, June, and the uncomfortable-looking pastor. Tobias stood on one side of the deck. Naomi stood on the other. Neither of them looked at each other. "We're here," Pastor Williams began, clearly reading from a card Ruby had given him, "to witness the union of Tobias Blackwood and Naomi Wells in the tradition of handfasting, an old Appalachian custom representing the binding of two families and the settlement of debts between them." Settlement of debts. That's all this was. A transaction. "Tobias," the pastor continued, "do you accept Naomi Wells as your wife to provide for her, protect her, and honor the agreement made between your family and hers?" "I do," Tobias said, his voice completely void of feeling. The pastor turned to Naomi. "Naomi Wells, do you accept Tobias Blackwood as your husband to honor him, to remain in his household, and to fulfill the agreement made between your father and his family?" Naomi's throat closed up. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. This was it. Once she said those two words, her life would never be the same. "Do," she whispered. "Then by the power vested in me and witnessed by those present," the pastor said quickly, like he wanted this over with as badly as everyone else, "I declare you husband and wife in the eyes of this family and community. The debt is settled, the bond is made. No, you may kiss the bride. No rings, no celebration, just silence." Ruby stepped forward with a satisfied smile. "Excellent. Marcus, please take Naomi's things to the East Wing. Tobias, I expect you at the mill tomorrow morning at 6. Then Ruby walked back into the house like she'd just completed a business transaction, which Naomi realized was exactly what this had been. Marcus gave Naomi another sympathetic look before following Ruby inside. June squeezed Naomi's shoulder. "I'll call you tomorrow," she whispered. Then she too disappeared into the house. The pastor practically ran away. And then it was just Naomi and Tobias standing on opposite sides of the deck, strangers legally bound together. Tobias turned to look at her for the first time since the ceremony began. "Show you to your room," he said, still in that flat, emotionless voice. "My room?" Naomi asked. Not yours," something flickered in Tobias's eyes. Not quite emotion, but something. "I don't touch women who don't want to be touched," he said. "This marriage might be legal in the eyes of my family and your father, but you didn't choose this. Neither did I. I won't force anything you're not willing to give." He walked past her toward the house, and Naomi followed because what else was she supposed to do? Tobias led her back through the beautiful, cold house to the second floor, to the room Ruby had shown her earlier. "This is yours," Tobias said, standing in the doorway like he was afraid to come inside. "Bathroom through that door. Closet stocked with clothes in your size. If you need anything else, tell Marcus." "What about you?" Naomi asked. "What about me?" Where do you sleep?" "Other end of the hall," Tobias said. "You won't see me unless you want to. I work early, come home late, keep to myself. You're free to do whatever you want in this house as long as you don't go into the South Wing. That's family business. Stay out of it." "Family business," Naomi repeated. "The illegal stuff. The gambling. Whatever else the Blackwoods did in the shadows." "Yes." Tobias turned to leave, then paused. "One more thing." "What?" He finally looked directly at her, and Naomi saw something in those dark eyes that looked almost like pain. "I'm sorry," Tobias said quietly. "I'm sorry my mother did this. I'm sorry your father put you in this position. I'm sorry you're here." Then he walked away, his footsteps echoing down the hall until a door closed somewhere in the distance. Naomi stood in the doorway of her beautiful prison, legally married to a stranger who just apologized for her entire existence. She walked inside, closed the door, and collapsed on the bed. And finally, she let herself break. Naomi cried for her mama who died too young, for her daddy who'd loved cards more than his daughter, for the life she'd never get to live, for the choices that had been stolen from her, for the stranger down the hall who looked as broken as she felt. She cried until there were no tears left, until her throat was raw and her eyes were swollen, and exhaustion pulled her under like a wave. When Naomi finally fell asleep, the sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold, beautiful and lonely, just like everything else in this place. Naomi woke up in the middle of the night to shouting. At first she thought she was dreaming, but no, those were real voices coming from somewhere in the house. Angry voices. She crept to her door and opened it a crack. "She's not staying in a separate room forever, Tobias." That was Ruby's voice, sharp and cutting. "She'll stay wherever I say she stays." Tobias's voice, harder than Naomi had heard it before. "She's your wife. She's a woman who got sold by her father to pay his debts," Tobias shot back. "I won't treat her like property just because everyone else does. You need to move on, Ruby's voice rose. It's been 5 years. Sarah is gone, the baby is gone. You can't bring them back by punishing yourself. Naomi's hand flew to her mouth. Sarah, the baby, Tobias had lost his wife. And a child. You dare say their names? Tobias's voice was low, dangerous. Don't you dare. I'm trying to help you heal. By forcing me to marry a stranger. By making another woman pay for something that isn't her fault. That's not healing, Mama. That's cruelty. I'm trying to save you from yourself. I don't want to be saved, Tobias roared, and Naomi flinched at the raw pain in his voice. I want to be left alone, I want. His voice broke silence. Then Ruby, quieter now, she stays. The agreement is made. Make it work, Tobias, for the family. Footsteps. A door slamming, more footsteps coming down the hall toward Naomi's room. Naomi gasped and stepped back from the door. The footsteps stopped right outside, silence. Naomi held her breath. Then slowly the footsteps retreated. Another door closed in the distance. Naomi stood in the dark, her heart hammering, her mind spinning. Tobias Blackwood had lost his wife and child 5 years ago. Ruby Blackwood had forced him into this marriage to make him move on. And Naomi was caught in the middle of a grief so deep it had swallowed a man whole. She walked to the window and looked out at the dark mountains. What have I got myself into? She whispered to the night. The mountains didn't answer. But somewhere in this house, a broken man was locked in his own room, trapped by his past and a future he never wanted. And Naomi realized something that made her stomach twist. They were both prisoners here, both sold, both trapped, both alone. Morning came too early. Naomi woke to sunlight streaming through the massive windows, momentarily confused about where she was. Then reality crashed back, the estate, the ceremony, Tobias's cold eyes, the argument she'd overheard in the middle of the night. She was married to a stranger in the mountains, and there was no going back. Naomi sat up slowly, her body aching from tension and crying. The clock on the nightstand read 7:43 a.m. She'd slept maybe 4 hours total. Her stomach growled, reminding her she hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. She had no idea where the kitchen was, or if she was even allowed to just wander around this massive house. A soft knock on the door made her jump. Naomi, a woman's voice, not Ruby. It's June, can I come in? Yes, Naomi called, her voice rough from crying. The door opened and June stepped in, carrying a tray with coffee, orange juice, and what looked like homemade biscuits. I thought you might be hungry, June said with a gentle smile. And maybe not ready to navigate the house yet. Naomi's eyes filled with tears at the simple kindness. Thank you. June set the tray on the small table by the window and sat down across from Naomi. How are you holding? Don't know, Naomi admitted honestly. I heard them last night, Tobias and your mother. They were arguing about his wife, Sarah. June's expression grew sad. You would have heard about it eventually. Might as well hear the truth from someone who cares. She took a breath. 5 years ago, Tobias was married to a woman named Sarah Chen, Marcus's younger sister, actually. That's how Tobias and Marcus became so close. They were family twice over, brothers-in-law and best friends. Naomi sipped the coffee, perfectly sweet, exactly how she liked it, and waited for June to continue. Sarah was 8 months pregnant with their first baby, June said quietly. A little girl. They were going to name her Lily. Tobias was so excited. He'd already converted one of the rooms into a nursery, bought every baby book he could find, drove Sarah crazy with how protective he was. June's eyes were distant, remembering. One night Sarah went into town to get groceries. Tobias wanted to go with her, but she insisted she was fine. She was always independent like that. On her way back up the mountain, a drunk driver crossed into her lane on one of those narrow curves. Her car went off the road. Naomi's hand flew to her mouth. Oh God. They died instantly, June said, her voice thick. Both of them, Sarah and the baby. Tobias got the call from the sheriff and she stopped, wiping her eyes. He broke, completely shattered, didn't talk for weeks, stopped eating. Marcus and I took turns staying with him because we were afraid he'd hurt himself. That's horrible, Naomi whispered, her heart aching for the man down the hall who she barely knew. Mama tried to help in her own way, June continued, but her way is control. She threw herself into the business, made Tobias take over more responsibility, kept him busy. It helped a little, gave him something to focus on, but he never healed. He just shut down, stopped feeling, stopped living. He goes through the motions, work, sleep, repeat. That's all he's done for 5 years. Ruby thought giving him a new wife would fix him, Naomi asked, anger creeping into her voice. June's face hardened. Mama thinks everything can be solved with power and control. When your father came to her, desperate to clear his debt, she saw an opportunity. Kill two birds with one stone, get the money Luther owed and force Tobias to move on. I told her it was cruel. I told her it wouldn't work. She didn't listen. She never listens. Naomi set down her coffee cup, her hands shaking. I'm supposed to replace a dead woman he loved. How is that supposed to work? You're not supposed to replace anyone, June said firmly, taking Naomi's hands. That's not your job. You didn't ask for this. You're a victim in this just like Tobias is. The only difference is you got forced into a situation you can't control and he got forced into a situation he won't control. What do you mean? Tobias could have said no, June explained. Mama has power, but she doesn't have complete control over him. He's a grown man. Runs half the business. He could have refused this arrangement, but he didn't. You know why? Naomi shook her head. Because he doesn't care, June said sadly. He doesn't care what happens to him anymore. Saying yes, saying no, it's all the same to him. Nothing matters when you've already lost everything that mattered. The words settled over Naomi like a heavy blanket. She thought about Tobias's empty eyes yesterday, the flat tone in his voice. I'm sorry you're here. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't angry at her. He was just empty. What do I do? Naomi asked quietly. June squeezed her hands. Whatever you want, this is your life, Naomi. Don't let my mother or your father or anyone else tell you what to do with it. If you want to leave, I'll help you. If you want to stay, I'll support you. If you want to try to build something here, she paused. Well, that's up to you and Tobias. A door slammed somewhere in the house. June checked her phone. That's him leaving for work. He always slams that door. Doesn't mean to, just doesn't pay attention. He'll be at the timber mill until late tonight. Probably won't be back until after dark. He do that every day. Every day, June confirmed. Works himself half to death. I think it's the only way he can sleep at night, exhaust himself so much he doesn't dream. After June left promising to call later and check in, Naomi took a long shower in the massive bathroom. The water pressure was incredible, the bathroom itself bigger than her entire bedroom back at the trailer. Fancy soaps and shampoos lined the shelf, all unused, still in their packaging. Everything in this house was beautiful and untouched, like a museum. Like a mausoleum. Naomi dried off and looked through the closet June had mentioned. Sure enough, it was stocked with clothes, jeans, t-shirts, sweaters, dresses, all in her exact size. Someone had done their homework. She pulled on jeans and a soft gray sweater, then forced herself to leave the room. Time to explore this prison she was living in. The house was even more impressive in daylight. Naomi wandered through rooms that looked professionally decorated but rarely used. A living room with leather furniture that still had that new smell. A dining room with a table that could seat 12 but had a thin layer of dust. A library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. That room at least showed signs of use. Some of the books had worn spines, bookmarks sticking out. Naomi pulled one out, *Beloved* by Toni Morrison. There was a bookmark about halfway through, like someone had stopped reading and never picked it back up. 5 years ago, she'd bet, before Sarah died. Before everything stopped. The kitchen was massive, industrial-grade appliances, marble countertops, a huge island in the center. And sitting at that island, drinking coffee and reading something on his phone was Marcus. He looked up when Naomi walked in. Hey, morning, how'd you sleep? Badly, Naomi said honestly. Marcus winced. Yeah, I figured. You want some breakfast? I was about to make eggs. You cook? Somebody has to, Marcus said, standing up and moving to the fridge. Tobias doesn't eat unless someone puts food directly in front of him, and Ruby thinks cooking is beneath her. June tries when she's here, but she's usually in Lexington, so I end up making breakfast most mornings before heading to the office. You live here? Naomi asked, sitting at the island. Guest house out back, Marcus explained, cracking eggs into a bowl. Came here 5 years ago to help Tobias through everything. Never left. Somebody needs to make sure he doesn't completely fall apart. Marcus moved around the kitchen with easy familiarity, and Naomi watched him work. He had an openness about him that was completely different from everyone else she'd met here. No hidden agendas, no cold calculation, just genuine warmth. Can I ask you something? Naomi said. Shoot. Did Tobias agree to this, to marrying me? Marcus was quiet for a moment, whisking eggs. Honestly, I don't think he cared enough to say no. When you stop caring about your own life, you stop fighting for it. His mom wanted it, so he shrugged and said fine. That's where he's at right now. said he could have refused. Technically, yes, Marcus agreed, pouring the eggs into a hot pan. But you gotta understand, after Sarah died, Tobias broke, and Ruby tried to fix him the only way she knows how, through control, through work, through pushing him forward even when he wanted to stay buried in grief. In a twisted way, she thought she was helping. By forcing him to marry a stranger, Marcus plated the eggs and slid them across to Naomi along with toast. Ruby's logic is that Tobias needs a reason to live again, someone to take care of, someone who needs him. She thought putting you in his life would give him purpose. He sat down across from her with his own plate. She's wrong, obviously. You can't force someone to heal, but that's how Ruby operates. Naomi picked at her eggs. This whole situation is so messed up. Completely, Marcus agreed. But here's what I know about Tobias. Underneath all that emptiness and grief, he's a good man. Before Sarah died, he was kind, generous, laughed all the time. That person is still in there somewhere. He's just buried under 5 years of pain. Do you think he'll ever? Naomi stopped, not sure how to finish the question. Heal, Marcus finished for her. I don't know, I hope so. I've been hopping for 5 years. He looked at Naomi with surprising intensity. But I'll tell you this, you don't owe him anything. You didn't sign up for this. You don't have to be his therapist or his savior or anything else. If you want to run, I'll help you. I'll drive you anywhere you want to go, give you money, help you start over. It was the third escape offer Naomi had received in 24 hours, and sitting in this beautiful kitchen, eating eggs made by a kind man who just wanted to help, Naomi almost said yes. Almost. But then she thought about her daddy's beaten face. About Ruby's cold eyes, about the debt that would still exist if she left. What happens to my father if I run? Naomi asked quietly. Marcus's expression grew serious. Honestly, nothing good. The Blackwoods don't forget debts. Ruby might send people to collect in other ways. So she was trapped. Not by locked doors or guards, but by guilt and fear and the weight of her father's mistakes. Not going anywhere, Naomi said, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. Not yet, anyway. Marcus studied her for a moment, then nodded. Okay, but the offer stands. Anytime you change your mind. After breakfast, Marcus headed to the office, a building on the property where he managed the legitimate timber operations. He gave Naomi his phone number in case you need anything or just want to talk to someone who isn't completely crazy. Alone again, Naomi explored more of the house. She found the south wing Marcus had warned her about. The door was locked, and she didn't try to open it. Whatever family business happened behind that door, she didn't want to know. She found a music room with a beautiful piano, dust-covered and untouched. A home gym that looked barely used. A sunroom with windows on 3 sides and a view that took her breath away. Mountains and forests stretching as far as she could see. It was beautiful. It was lonely. It was exactly like Tobias himself. Drop a comment and tell me, is Naomi making the right choice by staying? What would you do in her situation? That evening, Naomi was reading in the library. She'd found a worn copy of Their Eyes Were Watching God and had gotten lost in the story. When she heard the front door open and close, heavy footsteps, a bag dropping, water running in the kitchen, Tobias was home. Naomi's heart started racing. She hadn't seen him since yesterday's ceremony. Didn't know what to say to him. Didn't know if he even wanted to see her. She heard cabinets opening and closing. The microwave beeping. The sound of someone clearly struggling to figure out how to heat up food. Before she could talk herself out of it, Naomi got up and walked to the kitchen. Tobias stood at the microwave, still wearing work clothes, jeans covered in sawdust, a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up, work boots. He looked exhausted, his shoulders tight with tension. He didn't notice her at first, too focused on punching buttons on the microwave with increasing frustration. It's broken, Naomi said quietly. Tobias spun around, his eyes wide with surprise. For a second, something flickered in his expression, almost like fear, before the emptiness slammed back down. What? He asked. Microwave, Naomi said, stepping into the kitchen. Marcus told me. It's been broken for a month, but nobody's bothered to replace it. Tobias looked at the microwave like it had personally betrayed him. Oh, silence stretched between them, awkward and heavy. I could make you something, Naomi offered, the words coming out before she could stop them. If you want. I'm not a great cook, but I can manage eggs or a sandwich or... You don't have to do that, Tobias said quickly, already backing toward the door. I'm fine, His stomach growled. Loudly they both froze despite everything, the situation, the tension, the absurdity. Naomi felt her lips twitch with the urge to smile. Tobias's ears turned slightly red. I'm fine, he repeated less convincingly. When's the last time you ate? Naomi asked. This morning, maybe. I don't remember. Down, Naomi said, moving to the fridge before he could argue. I'm making you food. You know I don't have to, Naomi interrupted, pulling out eggs and cheese and vegetables. I'm offering. You can say no if you want, but your stomach already voted yes. A long moment Tobias just stood there, clearly torn between fleeing and staying. Finally, slowly, he sat down at the island, watching her with confused, wary eyes. Naomi focused on cooking, glad to have something to do with her hands. She made an omelet, nothing fancy, just eggs and cheese and peppers, but she'd made thousands of them at Rosie's diner. Her hands knew the rhythm, the kitchen filled with the smell of cooking food, and Naomi felt Tobias watching her. You heard the argument last night, Tobias said suddenly. Not a question. Naomi's hands faltered for just a second. Yes. Sorry, we shouldn't have been so loud. You don't have to apologize. Naomi plated the omelet and slid it across to him with toast and orange juice. I'm the one invading your space. Tobias looked at the food like he didn't know what to do with it. It's not poison, Naomi said dryly. His eyes flicked up to hers, and for just a second, just a heartbeat, she saw something that might have been amusement. Then it was gone. Tobias picked up the fork and took a bite. His eyebrows rose slightly. This is good, he said, sounding surprised. I worked at a diner for 6 years, Naomi said, sitting across from him with her own glass of juice. Made about 1 million omelets. You kind of get good at it eventually. Tobias ate in silence and Naomi watched him. Up close she could see the exhaustion carved into his face, dark circles under his eyes, lines of tension around his mouth. He looked like a man who hadn't had a good night's sleep in years, because he hadn't. June told me, Naomi said quietly, about Sarah and Lily. I'm so sorry, Tobias. His fork stopped halfway to his mouth. His jaw tightened. For a moment Naomi thought he might get up and leave, but instead he set down the fork very carefully and looked at her directly for the first time. I don't talk about them, he said, his voice rough. Okay, I mean it. I can't. He stopped, his hands clenching into fists. I can't talk about them without falling apart, and if I fall apart, I don't know if I'll be able to put myself back together again. Naomi's heart broke for him. Then we won't talk about them. Tobias studied her face like he was trying to figure out if she meant it. You're not what I expected, he said finally. What did you expect? I don't know. Someone angry, someone who'd scream at me for this whole mess, someone who'd demand things. Would that have been easier? Naomi asked. If I was angry, Tobias thought about it. Maybe. Anger, I understand. This, he gestured vaguely at her. Kindness. I don't know what to do with that. You eat the food I made, Naomi said simply. And maybe tomorrow you eat something else, and the day after that, and maybe eventually you start taking care of yourself again. Do you care? Tobias asked, genuine confusion in his voice. I'm the reason you're trapped here, Naomi corrected. Ruby is the reason I'm trapped here, and my father, you're just as stuck as I am. Something shifted in Tobias's expression. Not quite a smile, not quite hope. But something less empty than before. He finished his omelet in silence. When he was done, he stood up and took his plate to the sink. Thank you, he said quietly, for the food. You're welcome. He walked to the kitchen door, then paused. Naomi, yeah, you're right, we're both stuck, but I meant what I said yesterday. You don't have to stay in a separate room if you don't want to. This is your house too now. Go anywhere, do anything, take whatever you need. You're not a prisoner, even if it feels like it. Then he left, his footsteps echoing down the hall until a door closed softly in the distance. Naomi sat in the kitchen for a long time after he left, thinking about the broken man who'd just eaten his first real meal in who knows how long, thinking about how easy it would have been for him to be cruel, to take out his pain on her, to treat her like property the way Ruby did. But he hadn't. He'd given her space, apologized, thanked her for something as simple as an omelet. Underneath all that grief and emptiness, there was still a good man. Marcus was right about that, and Naomi made a decision. She couldn't fix Tobias. She couldn't bring back his wife and daughter. She couldn't heal 5 years of trauma, but maybe, just maybe, she could remind him what it felt like to be cared for, even in small ways, even if he didn't think he deserved it, not because she owed him anything, but because no one deserved to suffer alone. The next morning, Naomi woke up early. She made coffee, strong and black the way she'd seen Tobias drink it yesterday, and left it on the counter with a note for when you leave for work. And she heard him come downstairs around 5:30 a.m., heard him stop in the kitchen, heard the pause when he saw the coffee. She stayed in her room, listening. After a long moment, she heard the coffee being poured, the front door opening, closing. He'd taken it. It was a small thing. So small it barely mattered. But Naomi smiled anyway. She kept it up. Every morning, coffee ready before Tobias left for work. She didn't see him, didn't want to make it awkward, but she left the coffee. Sometimes with a piece of toast. Sometimes with fruit. He never said anything. But the cups were always empty when she came down later. After 3 days, there was a note next to the empty cup. "Thank you." After a week, the note said, "You don't have to do this." Naomi wrote back, "I know." The next morning, there was a different note. Why? Naomi thought about it, then wrote, "Because everyone deserves kindness. Even people who don't think they do." The note stopped after that, but the coffee continued. And slowly, so slowly Naomi almost didn't notice, things started to change. Tobias started coming home a little earlier. Not much. Maybe 30 minutes, but enough that sometimes he'd arrive while Naomi was making dinner. She'd started cooking every evening, partly because the kitchen was better than sitting alone in her room, partly because she liked cooking, mostly because she knew Tobias wouldn't eat otherwise. The first time he came home while she was cooking, he'd frozen in the doorway like a deer. "I made extra," Naomi had said casually, not looking at him. "If you're hungry." He'd hesitated for so long Naomi thought he'd leave, but then he'd sat down at the island and she'd given him a plate of spaghetti and garlic bread. They'd eaten in silence, but it was a different kind of silence. Not uncomfortable, just quiet. It became a routine. Naomi would cook, Tobias would eat. Sometimes they'd talk small things, nothing deep. The weather, the timber business, books they'd read. Tobias never smiled, never laughed. But sometimes his shoulders would relax a little. Sometimes he'd ask a question. Sometimes he'd linger at the table after he finished eating, like he wasn't quite ready to be alone again. Marcus noticed. One afternoon, he pulled Naomi aside with a strange expression on his face. "I don't know what you're doing," Marcus said, "but keep doing it." "I'm just making him food," Naomi protested. "No," Marcus said firmly. "You're making him remember how to be human. That's..." His voice got thick. "That's more than anyone's been able to do in 5 years." 2 weeks after the wedding, June came to visit. She found Naomi in the kitchen prepping chicken for dinner. "Are you holding up?" June asked, sitting at the island with a glass of wine. "Better than I expected," Naomi admitted. "Different than I expected. I heard you've been cooking for Tobias." "That okay?" "I'm not trying to. It's more than okay," June interrupted. "Naomi, my brother has been slowly dying for 5 years. Not physically, but in every way that matters. And in the past 2 weeks, I've seen more life in his eyes than I've seen since Sarah died. Whatever you're doing, please don't stop." "I'm not doing anything special," Naomi said. "Just being here." "Sometimes that's everything," June said softly. That night Tobias came home earlier than usual. Naomi was making jerk chicken, her mama's recipe, one of the few things she'd left behind besides the Bible and heartache. Tobias walked into the kitchen and stopped. Actually stopped and stared. Naomi asked, suddenly self-conscious. "That smell," Tobias said, his voice strange. "That's my grandmother used to make jerk chicken. She was from Jamaica. That smell is..." He stopped, his throat working. "Do you want me to make something else?" Naomi asked quickly. "I didn't mean to." "No," Tobias said, moving to the island and sitting down heavily. "No, it's..." He ran his hand over his face. "It's been so long since I smelled that, since I remembered her, since I remembered anything good." Naomi's hands trembled slightly as she plated the food. She'd been so focused on not pushing, on keeping everything neutral, that she hadn't considered the memories food could bring back. She set the plate in front of him, and Tobias just looked at it for a long moment. Then he took a bite, his eyes closed. When he opened them again, they were wet. "It tastes just like hers," Tobias whispered. "How did you?" "My mama was from Jamaica too," Naomi said softly. "Came to Kentucky when she was 18. Met my daddy. She taught me to cook before she died." Tobias looked up at her, really looked at her, and for the first time since Naomi had met him, she saw actual emotion in his eyes, pain, grief, but also something else, recognition. "You lost her," Tobias said, "not a question." "When I was 12, Naomi confirmed. "Cancer. We couldn't afford the treatment. My daddy..." She stopped, the old anger rising up. "He gambled away the money that could have helped her." "I'm sorry," Tobias said. "Me too." They sat there in the kitchen, two people shaped by loss, connected by grief neither of them had asked for. "Do you do it?" Tobias asked suddenly. "How do you keep going after losing someone you love?" Naomi thought about it. "Honestly, I don't know if I did it right. I just survived. Went to school, got jobs, took care of my daddy even when he didn't deserve it, kept putting one foot in front of the other. Some days that's all you can do." "Does it get easier?" "No," Naomi said honestly. "It gets different. The grief doesn't get smaller. You just get bigger around it. You learn to carry it. It becomes part of who you are." Tobias was quiet for a long time, eating slowly, thinking. "I haven't talked about Sarah in 5 years," he said finally. "Not her, not what happened, not how I feel. I just shut it all down." "You don't have to talk about it now," Naomi said gently. "I know, but maybe," he stopped, struggling with the words. "Maybe that's the problem. Maybe shutting it down is why I can't move forward." He set down his fork and looked at Naomi directly. "She would have liked you," Tobias said. "Sarah, she would have liked your kindness, your strength. She would have been angry about how you ended up here, but she would have liked you." It was the most he'd said at one time since Naomi had arrived. "Tell me about her," Naomi said impulsively. "If you want. You don't have to, but if you want to remember her out loud, I'm here." Tobias's hands clenched on the counter. For a moment, Naomi thought he'd shut down again, but instead he took a shaky breath and started talking. "She was Marcus's younger sister," Tobias said slowly, like the words were rusty from disuse. "We met at UK when I was a senior and she was a sophomore. She was studying to be a teacher, elementary education. She wanted to work with kids who came from rough backgrounds, kids who needed someone to believe in them." A small, sad smile crossed his face, the first smile Naomi had seen from him. "She was stubborn, argued with me about everything. Politics, books, the best way to make coffee. She never backed down, never let me win an argument just because. I loved that about her." "Sounds amazing," Naomi said softly. "She was." Tobias's voice cracked. "And when we found out she was pregnant, God, she was so happy, so excited. She'd already started buying baby clothes, reading parenting books, planning everything. She was going to be an incredible mother." A tear slid down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. "The night she died, we'd argued about something stupid. She wanted to go get groceries because we were out of milk. I told her it could wait until morning. She said she was fine, that I was being overprotective. She was right, I was, but I just wanted her safe, wanted them both safe." His voice broke completely. "She kissed me before she left, said, 'I love you, you overprotective idiot.' Those were the last words she ever said to me. And then he couldn't finish." His shoulders shook with silent sobs. Naomi didn't think. She just moved around the island and pulled Tobias into her arms. He stiffened for a second, like he'd forgotten what human comfort felt like. Then he broke. Tobias buried his face against her shoulder and cried deep, wrenching sobs that sounded like they were tearing him apart from the inside. 5 years of grief poured out all at once, and Naomi held him through it, her own tears falling into his hair. "I couldn't save them," Tobias gasped between sobs. "I couldn't. I should have made her stay home. I should have driven her. It's my fault." "No," Naomi said firmly, pulling back to look at him. "No, Tobias, it wasn't your fault. It was a drunk driver. It was a terrible, horrible accident, but it wasn't your fault. I should have protected them." "You can't protect people from everything," Naomi said, thinking about her own mama, her own guilt. "Sometimes bad things happen and there's nothing we can do to stop it. That doesn't make it our fault." Tobias looked at her with red, swollen eyes, and Naomi saw something shift in his expression. "Are you so wise?" he asked, his voice rough from crying. "I'm not wise," Naomi said. "I'm just someone who understands loss and guilt and wishing you could change the past." They stayed like that for a long moment, Naomi's hands on Tobias's shoulders, his eyes searching her face like he was seeing her, really seeing her for the first time. "Thank you," he whispered. "What?" "For listening, for not running away when I fell apart, for," he gestured helplessly, "for being here. You're welcome." Tobias pulled back, wiping his face with his hands. "I'm sorry." "That was human," Naomi interrupted. "That was human, and there's nothing wrong with that." He looked at her for another long moment, then did something that shocked her. He smiled. It was small, sad, broken around the edges, but it was real. "I forgot," Tobias said softly. "I forgot what it felt like to let someone in." "That a good thing or a bad thing?" Naomi asked. "I don't know yet," Tobias admitted. "But it's something, and that's more than I've felt in a long time." That night, Naomi lay in bed thinking about the man down the hall who'd finally allowed himself to cry. She wasn't falling for him. She couldn't be. This whole situation was too complicated, too messy, too forced. But she couldn't deny that something had shifted. They weren't strangers anymore. They were two people carrying grief, learning to exist in the same space. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of something neither of them expected. Naomi fell asleep with her mama's Bible on her nightstand and hope, fragile and uncertain, taking root in her chest for the first time since she'd left Hazard. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. Tobias still worked long hours, but he came home for dinner every night. Sometimes he'd talk. Sometimes he'd just eat in comfortable silence. Sometimes he'd help Naomi clean up afterward, drying dishes while she washed. Their shoulders almost touching in the small space, Marcus watched the change with barely concealed joy. "You're a miracle worker," he told Naomi one afternoon. "I'm just being his friend," Naomi protested. "Yeah, well, he hasn't had one of those in 5 years besides me, and I'm his employee, so it doesn't count." June visited more often, and Naomi loved her company. They'd sit in the sunroom drinking tea, and June would tell stories about Tobias before the tragedy, before the grief, when he was young and happy and full of dreams. "He wanted to expand the business," June said one afternoon. "Not the illegal stuff, he always hated that, the timber company. He wanted to go completely legitimate, hire more local people, create a sustainable operation that could support the whole community." "What stopped him?" Naomi asked. "Sarah died and he just gave up on everything. Let Mama take over the expansion plans, stopped caring about the future. It broke my heart watching him fade away like that." "He's not fatting anymore," Naomi said quietly. June smiled. "No, he's not, and that's because of you. But not everything was peaceful. Ruby appeared occasionally, always with cold eyes and sharp comments." "Get too comfortable," Ruby told Naomi one morning when she came by to drop off paperwork. "This arrangement is temporary, 6 months, then we'll see." "What?" Naomi asked. "If you're useful enough to keep around." Words stung, but Naomi kept her head high. She wouldn't let Ruby see her hurt. After Ruby left, Tobias found Naomi in the library, clearly upset. "What did she say?" he asked, anger coloring his voice. "Nothing that matters, Naomi," she told him. Tobias's jaw tightened. "Not going anywhere," he said firmly. "This is your home now. My mother doesn't get to decide that." "Tobias, this whole thing was her idea. She has the power here," Tobias said, stepping closer. "She has money. She has business connections, but she doesn't have power over my life. Not anymore. I let her control things for too long because I didn't care enough to fight back. But I care now." Naomi's breath caught. "You care." Tobias's dark eyes held hers. "I care about what happens to you. You didn't ask for this situation. You didn't deserve to be sold like property. And you sure as hell don't deserve to be threatened by my mother. So if she comes at you again, you tell me, I'll handle her." Something warm bloomed in Naomi's chest. Not love, not yet, but something close, something like trust. "Okay," she whispered. That weekend, Marcus invited Naomi to drive into Lexington with him. "You've been cooped up in this house for a month," he said. "You need to get out, see people, remember there's a world beyond these mountains." Naomi hesitated, but Tobias encouraged her. "Go, have fun, I'll be fine." So Naomi went, and Lexington was wonderful. Marcus took her to lunch at a nice restaurant, then to a bookstore where she spent an hour just browsing. He bought her 3 books despite her protests. "Consider it a late wedding present," Marcus said with a grin. On the drive back, Marcus got serious. "Can I ask you something personal?" he said. "Sure." "Are you really doing with all of this?" Naomi thought about it. "Honestly, better than I expected. Tobias isn't. He's not what I thought he'd be. He's kind, gentle, broken, but trying." "You happy?" Marcus asked. "I don't know if happy is the right word," Naomi admitted. "But I'm not miserable, and considering how this whole thing started, that feels like a win." Marcus smiled. "Fair enough." When they got back to the estate, Tobias was waiting on the front porch, and Naomi's heart did a strange little flip when she saw him. He was wearing jeans and a dark green Henley, his hair slightly damp like he'd just showered. He looked younger, more relaxed. "Did you have fun?" he asked as Naomi climbed the porch steps. "I did. Marcus bought me books." "Marcus spoils everyone," Tobias said, but there was affection in his voice. "Damn right I do," Marcus called, heading toward the guest house. "You too tomorrow." Naomi and Tobias stood on the porch as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. "Thank you," Tobias said suddenly. What? For being patient with me, for not giving up on, he gestured vaguely. On me. Tobias. I know this isn't what either of us wanted, he continued. But you've made it bearable, more than bearable. You've made me remember what it feels like to look forward to something, to coming home, to not being alone. Naomi's throat tightened. You're not alone anymore. Neither are you. They looked at each other in the fading light, and Naomi felt something shift between them. Something neither of them was quite ready to name, but it was there, growing, changing everything. And for the first time since her father sold her to pay his debts, Naomi thought maybe, just maybe, this forced marriage might become something neither of them expected, something real. The sudden noise jolted Naomi awake in the dark bedroom. She sat up abruptly, heart pounding, momentarily confused about where she was. Another sound, something breaking downstairs, made her grab her phone. 2:47 a.m. glowed on the screen. Naomi slipped on her robe and moved quietly to her bedroom door. The hallway was dark except for light spilling from downstairs. Muffled voices, one angry and slurred, reached her ears. Her stomach tightened with dread. She recognized that voice. Moving carefully down the stairs, Naomi's bare feet made no sound on the hardwood floors. As she reached the bottom, the voices became clearer. Care what time it is. I need to see my daughter. Naomi, where are you? Luther, her father, was here in the middle of the night, clearly intoxicated. Naomi stepped into the foyer and froze. Luther stood unsteadily near the door, his clothes disheveled and dirty. Fresh bruises marked his face alongside older healing ones. Ruby stood nearby in a silk robe, her expression icy. Between them, Tobias looked ready to explode with barely contained anger. You need to leave, Tobias said, his voice low and dangerous. Now. Without talking to my daughter, Luther slurred. Naomi, baby, where are you? She doesn't want to see you, Tobias stated firmly. You don't speak for her, she's my daughter. Naomi's voice was small. All three turned to look at her, Luther's face crumpled with what might have been relief. Baby girl. Thank goodness, you gotta help me. Tobias immediately moved to stand between Naomi and Luther. Go back upstairs, he told Naomi, but Naomi stepped around him, her initial shock giving way to anger. What are you doing here? I need help, Luther said, stumbling toward her. Just a little money to get these people off my back. They're threatening me, Naomi. I'm in real trouble this time. You already got your money, Ruby said coldly. The debt was settled when you received the $10,000 up front. That was our agreement. I lost it all, Luther cried. I had a sure thing, a poker game in Lexington. I thought I could win enough to pay everyone back, but you gambled it away, Naomi said, her voice flat. You gambled away the money you got for selling me. Luther's face twisted. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Naomi's voice rose, months of buried emotions finally surfacing. Tell me, Daddy. What was it like when you sold your own daughter to pay your debts? When you looked me in the eye and made that deal? I was desperate, Luther shouted. I needed help. You needed help 12 years ago when Mama was sick. Naomi's voice cracked with pain. You needed help when you chose your addiction over her treatment. You needed help every single day you chose cards over your family. But you never got it. You never even tried. That's not fair. You sold me. Naomi's voice broke completely. You sold your own child to strangers to cover your mistakes. And then you took that money and gambled it away the same week. So don't stand there and tell me what's fair. Luther's face crumpled, tears streaming down his cheeks. I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. I have an addiction. It's a sickness. Then get treatment, Naomi said, her voice trembling but firm. Check into a program, go to meetings, get a sponsor. Do something, anything, instead of showing up here in the middle of the night demanding more money to throw away. I can't stop, Luther sobbed. I've tried, I just can't. You mean you won't, Naomi said quietly. You won't stop because the addiction is more important to you than anything else. More important than Mama was, more important than I am, more important than your own life. She took a shaky breath, and when she spoke again, her voice was steady. I'm done, Daddy. I'm done sacrificing myself for you. I'm done hoping you'll change. I'm done pretending you love me more than you love gambling. Luther reached toward her desperately. Baby girl, Tobias caught Luther's wrist firmly before he could touch Naomi. Don't. The word was quiet but carried absolute authority. Luther looked up at Tobias and something ugly crossed his face. You think you're saving her. You bought her just like I sold her. You're no better than me. The words hit Naomi like a slap because part of her wondered if they were true. Tobias's jaw tightened, but he didn't let go of Luther's wrist. You're right, he said quietly. I participated in something that never should have happened, but here's the difference. I'm trying to make it right. And you're here at 3 in the morning trying to squeeze more money out of the daughter you already betrayed." He released Luther's wrist and pulled out his wallet. He counted out several $100 bills and held them out. "This is $10,000, Tobias said. "Take it. But understand something, this is the last time. You come back here again, you try to contact Naomi again, and I won't be polite. I'll have you removed from the property. I'll make sure every gambling establishment in a 100-mile radius knows your face. I'll make your life very difficult, are we clear?" Luther stared at the money like it was salvation itself. He grabbed it with shaking hands. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you, I'll—" "Don't thank me," Tobias interrupted. "And don't promise you'll change. We both know you won't, just take the money and go." Luther looked at Naomi one more time. "Baby girl, don't call me that," Naomi said, her voice breaking. "Don't ever call me that again, that's what Mama called me, you don't get to use her words." Something in Luther's face crumbled. For just a second, Naomi saw genuine pain there, genuine regret, but it didn't matter. Regret without change was just another empty promise. Luther turned and stumbled out the door into the night. The second he was gone, Ruby spoke. "That was foolish, Tobias. Giving him more money only enables his behavior." "Mama," Tobias said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "It's 3 in the morning, I'm not doing this with you right now. Go back to bed." Ruby's eyes narrowed. "We'll discuss this tomorrow." "We won't," Tobias said firmly. "This is my house, my money, my decision, and it's done." A long moment, Ruby stared at her son like she didn't recognize him. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away, her silk robe trailing behind her like a shadow. Naomi and Tobias stood in the foyer. Broken glass from whatever Luther had knocked over glittered on the floor between them. "I'm sorry," Naomi whispered. "I'm so sorry he came here. I didn't—" "Stop," Tobias said gently, turning to her. "You have nothing to apologize for. None of this is your fault. You gave him $10,000. I did." "Why?" Tobias was quiet for a moment. "Because I know what it's like to be desperate. To want something so badly, rational thought disappears. He's sick, Naomi. Addiction is a real illness. He needs help, not judgment. Won't get help." Naomi said, tears sliding down her face now. "He'll take that money and gamble it away just like he did the first 10,000, just like he's done with every dollar he's ever had. He won't change, he can't." "I know," Tobias said softly, "but at least I gave him the chance. What he does with it is on him, not on you." Naomi looked up at this man who'd just given her father $10,000 with no expectation of return, who defended her, protected her, seen her father's ugly truth and responded with grace instead of cruelty. "Why are you so kind?" she whispered. Tobias's expression twisted into something painful. "I'm not kind, Naomi. I participated in this whole situation. I married you knowing you've been forced into it. I let my mother orchestrate everything because I was too empty inside to care. There's nothing kind about that." "You gave me my own room," Naomi said. "You told me I wasn't a prisoner. You've been respectful when you could have been cruel. You just defended me against my own father. That's kind, Tobias. That's better than kind. Or maybe it's just basic human decency," Tobias said, "which shouldn't be exceptional, but I guess in this situation it is." They stood there in the broken glass in the aftermath of Luther's desperate visit, and Naomi felt something shift between them, something that had been building for weeks. "I need to clean this up," Tobias said, looking at the mess. "Help." "You should go back to bed." "I'll help," Naomi repeated firmly. They cleaned in silence, sweeping up glass, wiping down surfaces. Their hands brushed as they worked, and each touch sent warmth through Naomi. When they finished, Tobias walked Naomi back upstairs. They stopped outside her bedroom door. "Try to get some sleep," Tobias said. "You too." He turned to leave, and Naomi heard herself say, "Tobias," he stopped. "Yeah, thank you for everything, for defending me, for caring." Tobias looked at her for a long moment, something intense and unreadable in his dark eyes. "I do care," he said quietly. "More than I thought I could again, more than I probably should. Shouldn't you? Because this whole situation started wrong," Tobias said. "You're here because you were forced to be, because your father made a terrible choice and my mother took advantage of it. Any feelings that come out of that foundation are complicated." "What if they're real anyway?" Naomi asked, her heart pounding. "What if something good grew out of something wrong?" Tobias stepped closer, and Naomi's breath caught. He was so close she could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes, could smell his scent, clean and warm. What are you saying, Naomi? I'm saying, she took a shaky breath. I'm saying I don't feel forced anymore. I feel like I'm choosing to be here. Choosing you, is that wrong? I don't know, Tobias said honestly, his voice rough. Maybe, or maybe it's the most honest thing either of us has felt in a long time. He raised his hand slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he cupped her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear she didn't know had fallen. I don't want to hurt you, he whispered. Then don't. I don't want you to feel obligated. I don't, Naomi interrupted. Tobias, I'm standing here right now because I want to be, not because of my father's debt, not because of your mother's plans, because I want to be with you. Something in Tobias's expression cracked open. He leaned down slowly, his forehead resting against hers. I'm falling for you, he breathed. And it terrifies me, because the last time I let myself care about someone, I lost everything. I know, Naomi whispered back. And I can't promise I won't leave. I can't promise this will work, but I can promise I'm here right now, and I'm not going anywhere tonight. Tobias pulled back slightly to look at her. What do you want, Naomi? Really want? Want you to kiss me, she said. Not because we're married on paper, not because we're supposed to, but because you want to. I do want to, Tobias said, his voice dropping even lower. I've wanted to for weeks, but I didn't want to take advantage. You're not, Naomi assured him. I'm asking, I'm choosing. Tobias searched her face one more time, making sure. Then slowly, so slowly, he lowered his lips to hers. The kiss was gentle at first, careful, testing. But when Naomi rose on her toes and wrapped her arms around his neck, something ignited between them. Tobias pulled her closer, one hand in her hair, the other around her waist. The kiss deepened, becoming something more urgent, passionate, real. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Tobias rested his forehead against hers again. That was, he started. Yeah, Naomi agreed, her heart racing. They stood there for a long moment, just breathing together, holding each other. I should let you sleep, Tobias said, but he didn't move. You should, Naomi agreed, but she didn't let go. Finally, reluctantly, they separated. Good night, Naomi, Tobias said softly. Good night, Tobias. He walked down the hall to his room, and Naomi watched him go before slipping inside her own. She lay in bed, her lips still tingling, her heart still racing. Everything had changed tonight. Her father had shown up and she'd finally let him go. And Tobias had kissed her like she mattered, like she was wanted, like she was chosen. Naomi fell asleep with a smile on her face and hope blooming in her chest. The next morning, Naomi woke up to find a note slid under her door. Meet me in the sunroom at 9. I want to show you something. Naomi showered and dressed quickly, her stomach full of butterflies. Last night felt like a dream. Had it really happened? Had Tobias really kissed her at 9:00 exactly? She walked into the sunroom. Tobias was there, wearing jeans and a navy blue Henley, looking nervous. On the table in front of him was a folder. Morning, he said, his eyes soft when they met hers. Morning. About last night. Are you going to tell me it was a mistake? Naomi asked, her heart sinking. No, Tobias said quickly. The opposite. I wanted to. He took a breath. I don't want to keep doing this the wrong way, so I want to start over, do this right. Do you mean? Tobias opened the folder and pulled out papers. These are annulment papers. I had my lawyer draw them up this morning, sign them, and this marriage is void. Legally, it'll be like it never happened. Naomi's stomach dropped. You want to annul the marriage? I want to give you a choice, Tobias corrected. You never had one before. Your father forced you into this. My mother forced you into this. I participated in that and I hate myself for it. So I'm giving you the choice now, Naomi. Sign these papers. I'll give you money enough to go anywhere, do anything, start over completely. Or he paused, looking vulnerable in a way that made Naomi's chest ache. Or, she prompted, or stay, not because you have to, not because you're obligated, but because you want to. And if you stay, I want to court you properly, date you, let you get to know me outside of this forced situation. Let you choose me, really choose me, with full freedom to walk away anytime. Naomi stared at the papers, her mind spinning. Freedom, real freedom. She could sign those papers and leave, start over somewhere new. Maybe go to college like she'd always dreamed. Maybe open that little cafe she'd fantasized about. Maybe just be Naomi Wells without the weight of her father's mistakes crushing her. It was everything she'd wanted, but she thought about the past 2 months. Mornings making coffee for a broken man. Evenings cooking dinner and watching him slowly come back to life. Late-night conversations in the kitchen. The way Tobias looked at her like she was precious. The way he defended her against her father. The kiss that had set her entire body on fire. She thought about how it felt to be seen. Really seen. Not as property or a burden or a disappointment, but as Naomi, just Naomi, and that being enough. What if I want both? Naomi asked quietly. Tobias looked confused. Both. What if I sign the papers, get the annulment, but stay anyway, not as your wife, as someone you're dating, someone who's here by choice? Understanding dawned in Tobias's eyes. You want the freedom to leave, but you're choosing to stay, Naomi said. I need to know I can walk away if I want to, that I'm not trapped. But I also need you to know I'm staying because I want to, not because I have to. A slow smile spread across Tobias's face, a real smile, the kind that made him look 10 years younger. That's perfect, he said. Yeah, let's do that. Naomi signed the annulment papers with shaking hands. Each signature felt like shackles falling away. Like breathing for the first time, when she finished, Tobias took the papers and locked them in a safe. Be filed tomorrow, he said, and then you're free, legally completely free. Then, Naomi asked, and then I take you on a proper date, Tobias said, moving closer, if you'll let me. Let you. He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs stroking her cheeks. I'm going to do this right, Naomi. I'm going to court you the way you deserve, take you places, show you things. Let you see all of who I am, the good and the broken parts, and let you decide if you want this, want me. I already know I want you, Naomi said. Then let me prove I'm worthy of that, Tobias said. Please, Naomi nodded, unable to speak around the emotion clogging her throat. Tobias kissed her forehead gently. First date is tonight, 7 o'clock, wear something nice. Where are we going? It's a surprise. Drop a comment right now and tell me, are you team Naomi and Tobias? Do you think they can make this work? Let me know. That evening, Naomi stood in front of her closet, panicking. Where something nice was not helpful when you'd never been on a real date before. A knock on her door made her jump. Naomi, it's June. Can I come in, please? Naomi called desperately. June walked in and took one look at Naomi's face. First date panic. How did you know? Tobias called me. Asked me to help you get ready. He's nervous too, by the way. Marcus says he's been changing his shirt for the past hour. Image of Tobias nervously changing shirts made Naomi smile. June went straight to the closet and pulled out a dress Naomi had never worn, deep burgundy knee-length with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt. This one, June said. Trust me. Half an hour later, Naomi looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized her own reflection. The dress fit perfectly. June had done her hair, natural curls framing her face, the rest pulled back in an elegant style. Simple makeup that made her eyes look huge and her skin glow. You look beautiful, June said softly. Tobias is going to lose his mind. A knock on the bedroom door made both of them turn. Naomi, Tobias's voice. You ready? June grinned and opened the door. Tobias stood in the hallway wearing dark slacks and a burgundy shirt, almost the exact same color as Naomi's dress. His hair was freshly cut, his beard trimmed, and he looked so handsome Naomi forgot how to breathe. When Tobias saw her, he went completely still. He breathed. You're wow. You clean up pretty nice yourself, Naomi managed. June laughed. You two are adorable. Now go, have fun. Don't come back too early. She pushed them both toward the stairs. Tobias offered Naomi his arm and she took it, feeling like she was in a fairy tale. Outside, instead of the black SUV Naomi expected, there was a beautiful classic car, a restored navy blue Chevrolet from the 1960s. This was my grandfather's, Tobias explained, opening the passenger door for her. He left it to me when he died. I've been restoring it for years. Tonight felt like the right time to finally take it out. They drove down the mountain as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Tobias put on music, a mix of old-school R&B and modern soul, and they sang along, laughing when they hit wrong notes. After about 45 minutes, they pulled up to a restaurant in Lexington that looked elegant and intimate. Tobias, Naomi said, suddenly nervous. This place looks expensive, perfect for a first date, he finished. Because it is. Come on. Inside, they were led to a private table by the window with a view of the city lights. The food was incredible, Southern cuisine with creative touches, each dish beautifully presented. But better than the food was the conversation. They talked about everything. Books they loved, music that moved them, dreams they'd had as kids. Tobias told her about his grandfather who taught him everything about timber and respecting the land. Naomi told him about her mama, about the recipes she'd left behind, about how cooking kept her mama's memory alive. What did you want to be? Tobias asked. For everything before your dad's debts and all of this. What did you dream about? Naomi thought about it. I wanted to open a cafe, nothing fancy, just a small place where people could come get good coffee, homemade food. A community space, somewhere people felt welcome. That's beautiful, Tobias said. You should do it, maybe someday. Not now, Tobias leaned forward. Naomi, you're free. You could open that cafe tomorrow if you wanted. Don't have the money. I do. Naomi's eyes widened. Tobias, I can't take your money. It wouldn't be taking, he interrupted. It would be investing. In you, in your dream, not because of anything except that I believe in you and I want to see you happy. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. You barely know me. I know enough, Tobias said softly. I know you're kind, strong, resilient. You survived things that would have broken other people. You deserve to see your dreams come true. What about your dreams? Naomi asked. What did you want before I lost everything? Tobias finished. I wanted to take the family business completely legitimate, expand the timber company, create jobs for the community, build something sustainable and good. That's still possible. Tobias looked doubtful. The underground operations are tied up with my mother. The Blackwood name is connected to things I'm not proud of. I don't know if I can separate myself from that legacy. You can, Naomi said firmly. Tobias, you're not your family, you're not your mother's choices. You can choose something different. He looked at her for a long moment. When did you get so wise? I learned from a pretty remarkable person, Naomi said with a small smile. After dinner, Tobias drove them to a spot overlooking Lexington, a hilltop park with a view of the entire city spread out below, lights twinkling like stars. They sat on the hood of the car, shoulders touching, looking at the view. Have a confession, Tobias said. I've been planning this date for weeks, ever since, he paused. Ever since I realized I was falling for you, I kept telling myself it was wrong, that I shouldn't let myself feel anything, but I couldn't help it. You brought light back into my life, Naomi. You made me want to live again. Naomi took his hand, lacing their fingers together. You brought light into my life too. You showed me what it feels like to be valued, protected, seen. I want to keep doing that, Tobias said, turning to face her. I want to spend every day showing you how extraordinary you are, how worthy of love you are, how much you matter. Tobias, he slid off the hood and to Naomi's shock got down on one knee. Wait, Naomi said, her heart hammering. What are you? I'm not proposing, Tobias said quickly. We just annulled our marriage this morning. He pulled out a small box. I want to do this right. So Naomi Wells, will you be my girlfriend? Will you let me court you properly? Will you give me the chance to earn your heart the right way? Naomi started crying and laughing at the same time. You're asking me to be your girlfriend. I know it's unconventional given that we were married until this morning, but yes, Naomi interrupted. Yes, I'll be your girlfriend. Yes to all of it. Tobias opened the box and inside was a simple, beautiful bracelet, silver with a small charm shaped like a mountain. It's not an engagement ring, he explained. It's a promise that I'll do this right, that I'll choose you every day, that I'll never take you for granted. He fastened it around her wrist and Naomi looked at it through tears. It's perfect, she whispered. Tobias stood up and pulled her into his arms. You're perfect. He kissed her under the stars and it felt like the beginning of something beautiful, something chosen, something real. They drove home late, singing along to the radio, Tobias's hand finding hers on the center console. When they pulled up to the estate, both of them were reluctant for the night to end. Thank you, Naomi said, for the best first date of my life. It's the only first date of your life, Tobias pointed out with a smile. Then you set the bar really high. He walked her to her bedroom door like a proper gentleman. Good night, Naomi, he said softly. Good night, Tobias. He kissed her one more time, gentle, sweet, full of promise, then walked down the hall to his own room. Naomi floated into her room, touching the bracelet on her wrist, barely believing any of this was real. She'd come to this mountain as someone sold to pay a debt. She was staying as someone who chose love freely, and that made all the difference. The next few months flew by in a blur of happiness Naomi had never imagined possible. True to his word, Tobias courted her properly. He took her on dates, restaurants in Lexington, concerts in Louisville, weekend trips to Nashville. He introduced her to his world, showing her the timber operations, explaining his dreams for expansion, asking her opinions, valuing her thoughts. And he supported her dreams too. Within a month, Tobias had helped Naomi find a perfect location for her cafe, a small space in downtown Hazard that needed work but had good bones. He provided the investment, she provided the vision. Together, they transformed it into something beautiful. Naomi's place opened 4 months after that first date. It was everything Naomi had dreamed: warm lighting, comfortable seating, locally sourced food, and the best coffee in eastern Kentucky. A community space where everyone was welcome. The opening day was busy and wonderful. June came. Marcus came with his new girlfriend. Even some of Naomi's old coworkers from Rosie's diner stopped by, and standing outside looking through the window was Luther. Naomi saw him through the glass. He looked different, thinner, cleaner, almost sober. She could have ignored him, could have called someone to make him leave, could have turned away, but something in his face stopped her. She walked outside. "Daddy." Luther looked at the ground. "Naomi. I know you said not to contact you. I'm not trying to bother you. I wanted to see what you built, wanted to see you." "What do you want?" Naomi asked, her voice guarded. "Nothing," Luther said quickly. "I don't want money or help or anything. He took a shaky breath. "I'm 3 months sober, got into a program down in Lexington, been doing meetings every day, got a sponsor, working through things." He finally looked up at her, and Naomi saw something different in his eyes: clarity. Maybe even hope. "I can't undo what I did," Luther said, his voice breaking. "I can't give you back your childhood, can't bring back your mama, can't take back selling you to strangers. I can't change any of it, but I wanted you to know I'm trying, finally trying to get better, not for you, not to get you back, just because I need to, because I'm tired of being the person I've been." Naomi's eyes filled with tears. "You look good, Daddy, healthier." "Feel better," Luther admitted. "Clearer." For the first time in I don't know how long. They stood there on the sidewalk, and Naomi felt something shift inside her. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe someday the possibility of it. "I'm proud of you," Luther said, gesturing to the cafe. "Your mama would be proud too. You built something real here, something good." "Thank you." Luther nodded and turned to leave. "Daddy," Naomi called. He stopped. "Keep going to your meetings, keep trying, and maybe," she took a breath, "maybe in a few months, if you're still sober, you can come back. We can have coffee, talk. Not as father and daughter yet, just as two people trying to heal." Luther's eyes filled with tears. "I'd like that, thank you, Naomi." He walked away, and Naomi watched him go. She might never have the father-daughter relationship she'd wanted as a child. The damage might be too deep to fully repair. But at least now there was a chance. And sometimes a chance was enough. 6 months after their first date, Tobias made an announcement. He called a meeting. Ruby, June, Marcus, and Naomi all gathered in the living room of the estate. "I'm shutting down the underground operations," Tobias said without preamble. "All of it, the gambling rooms, everything that's not legal. We're going completely legitimate." Ruby's face went white with fury. "You can't." "I can, and I am," Tobias said firmly. "The Blackwood Timber Company is profitable enough on its own. We don't need the questionable revenue. Not putting our family's reputation at risk anymore." "This is because of her," Ruby said, glaring at Naomi. "She's made you weak," Tobias said. "She's made me strong enough to do what I should have done years ago. The questionable operations end. We build something clean, something good, something my future children won't have to be ashamed of." Ruby stood up, trembling with rage. "If you do this, you're on your own. I won't support you." "Don't need your support, Mama," Tobias said calmly. "I'm a grown man making my own choices. You can accept it or not, that's up to you." Ruby looked at her son like she didn't know him. Then she looked at Naomi with pure hatred. "This is your fault," Ruby hissed. "No," June said, standing up. "This is Tobias finally becoming the man he was always meant to be. If you can't see that, that's your loss, not his." Ruby stared at her daughter in shock, then turned and walked out of the house. After she left, Marcus started clapping. "About time," he said, grinning. "I've been waiting years for you to do this." Tobias smiled and pulled Naomi close. Couldn't have done it without her. That night, Tobias took Naomi to their spot, the hilltop overlooking Lexington, where they'd had their first real conversation as a couple. "Have something for you," he said. "Another bracelet," Naomi teased. "Better." He handed her a folder. Inside were property deeds, the entire Blackwood estate now in both their names. "What is this?" Naomi asked, her voice shaking. "Not my property," Tobias said. "You're my partner, my equal. Everything I have I want you to share. Not because you're obligated, but because you chose to be here. You chose me, and that makes you the most precious person in my world." He cupped her face in his hands. "You came into my life when I was barely living," he said softly. You reminded me what it felt like to hope, to dream, to want a future. You're not just my girlfriend, Naomi. You're my best friend, my partner, my reason for wanting to be better." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Naomi's breath caught. "No, we did this backwards," Tobias said, getting down on one knee. "We got married before we even knew each other. Then we annulled it and started over. But now I know you, the real you, and I love you, all of you. So Naomi Wells, will you marry me? For real this time, not because anyone forced you, but because you want to build a life with me." Naomi was crying too hard to speak. She nodded frantically. "I need to hear you say it," Tobias said, smiling through his own tears. Naomi managed. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes to everything." He slipped the ring on her finger, a simple, beautiful diamond that caught the lights of the city below. Then he stood and kissed her, and Naomi felt like her heart might burst from happiness. They'd started with a forced marriage built on desperation and debt. They were choosing a real marriage built on love and partnership and hope. 1 year later, Naomi and Tobias stood in front of their friends and community and had the wedding they both deserved. Not a cold transaction on a deck with strangers. A real wedding with flowers and music and joy. Marcus was best man. June was maid of honor. The cafe staff came. Timber company employees came. Half of Hazard came. Even Luther came, 1 year sober now, working at the cafe, slowly rebuilding a relationship with his daughter. Ruby didn't attend. She'd cut off all contact when Tobias went legitimate. It hurt, but Tobias was learning that some people couldn't celebrate your growth because it forced them to confront their own failures. As Naomi walked down the aisle toward Tobias, wearing a dress she'd chosen in a ceremony she'd planned, surrounded by people who genuinely loved her, she thought about how far they'd both come. From strangers forced together by debt and manipulation, to partners who chose each other freely every single day. Tobias looked at her like she was the sun, and when they said their vows, real vows, chosen vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. "I, Tobias Blackwood, choose you, Naomi Wells," Tobias said, his voice thick with emotion. "Not because I have to, not because anyone forced me, but because every day I wake up and choose you, choose us. Choose this life we're building together. You made me believe in love again, in second chances, in tomorrow, and I promise to spend every tomorrow showing you how much you mean to me. I, Naomi Wells, choose you, Tobias Blackwood," Naomi said through happy tears. "You showed me what real love looks like. What partnership means, what it feels like to be valued and cherished and seen. You took the worst thing that ever happened to me and helped me transform it into something beautiful, not because you're perfect, but because you're perfectly mine and I'm perfectly yours." When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Tobias kissed Naomi like it was the first and last time all at once. "My wife," he whispered against her lips. "For real this time." "My husband," she whispered back. "Always." 5 years later, Naomi stood in the kitchen of the estate. The home they'd transformed together from a cold museum into a warm, living space filled with love and laughter. Their 3-year-old daughter, Maya, sat at the island coloring while Naomi prepared dinner. Tobias would be home soon from the timber company, the completely legitimate, thriving business that now employed much of the county and operated with complete integrity. Naomi's cafe had expanded to 3 locations across eastern Kentucky. She'd started a scholarship fund for young people from difficult backgrounds who wanted to pursue their dreams. Luther was 5 years sober now. He worked at the flagship cafe and had slowly, carefully rebuilt enough trust to be a grandfather to Maya. Not perfect, but present and trying. Ruby had never reconciled with Tobias. She'd moved away, unable to accept that her son had chosen his own path. It still hurt him sometimes, but he'd learned that you can't force people to support your growth. June visited every week, being the best Aunt Maya could ask for. Marcus had married his girlfriend 2 years ago. They'd met at Naomi's cafe, actually, and Marcus loved to joke that Naomi was responsible for his happiness too. Life wasn't perfect. They still had hard days, still struggled sometimes with echoes from their pasts, but they had each other. They had love. They had a daughter who would never question whether she was wanted or valued. And they had a story that proved the worst beginning doesn't determine your ending. As long as you're brave enough to heal, strong enough to choose yourself, and wise enough to recognize real love when it arrives, the front door opened. "I'm home," Tobias called. "Daddy," Maya shrieked, jumping down from her chair and running to him. Naomi heard Tobias scoop her up, heard Maya's giggles, heard his deep laugh, a sound she never got tired of hearing. Tobias walked into the kitchen carrying their daughter, and his face lit up when he saw Naomi. Even after years of marriage, he still looked at her like she was everything. "How was your day, beautiful?" he asked, setting Maya down and pulling Naomi into his arms. "Perfect," Naomi said honestly. "Absolutely perfect." He kissed her softly, and Naomi thought about the terrified young woman who'd stood in these mountains years ago, believing she'd been sold into a nightmare. She'd been wrong. She'd been sold into a fairy tale. Not because a man had rescued her, but because she'd found the strength to rescue herself. And in doing so, she'd helped rescue him too, two broken people, healing each other, building something beautiful out of ashes. "Love you," Tobias whispered. "Love you too," Naomi whispered back, and she meant it with every fiber of her being. Here's what Naomi and Tobias's story teaches us. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can lead you exactly where you need to be, but only if you're brave enough to heal, strong enough to choose yourself, and wise enough to recognize real love when it finally shows up. Being sold didn't make Naomi a victim forever. Her choices made her a victor. Not because a man saved her, but because she saved herself and built a life of her own choosing. Remember, you are never just what someone else makes you. You are what you choose to become. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes family is the people who show up for you when everyone else walks away. Sometimes it's the man who gives you freedom when he could have kept you trapped. Sometimes it's the friends who become family. Sometimes it's the daughter you raise to be stronger and more free than you ever were. And forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't about excusing harm. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of someone else's failures. Naomi didn't have to fully forgive her father to move forward. She just had to stop letting his mistakes define her future. If this story touched your heart, if it made you believe in second chances and chosen families and the power of healing, drop a like right now. Share this with someone who needs to hear that they can rise from any situation, that they're not defined by what was done to them, but by what they choose to do next. Subscribe to this channel for more stories that will make you feel, make you think, and make you believe in love again. Drop a comment and tell me, what's the biggest lesson you're taking from Naomi's journey? I read every single one. Thank you for going on this journey with me. Thank you for believing in Naomi and Tobias. Until next time, remember, you are worthy. You are valuable. You are enough. And your story isn't over yet. Peace, love, and blessings.